Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Haxi Myers-Belkin, and these are the headlines. Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe accuses his recently fired number 2 of consulting witch doctors as part of efforts to topple him. Emmerson Mnangagwa saying he's been forced to flee to South Africa after receiving a barrage of death threats. We'll be crossing live to Harare. After UN handouts at a Ugandan refugee camp are delayed by 2 weeks, dozens of South Sudanese refugees are forced to return to their war-ravaged country in search of food. And we visit the South African province of KwaZulu-Natal, where assassinations and local politics go hand in hand. Hi again, and thank you very much for tuning in. Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe has said that he fired his vice president because he'd been plotting to take his place. Mugabe has accused Emmerson Mnangagwa of asking witch doctors when Mugabe would die. Mnangagwa's allies, meanwhile, say that Zimbabwe's former number 2 has fled to South Africa amid a series of death threats. Grace Mugabe, who is now widely expected to take up the post of vice president, had previously called Mnangagwa a snake that must be hit on the head. Well, for more on this, we can cross live now to Harare to speak with journalist Oliver Matthews. Oliver, during the course of pro-Mugabe demonstrations today, we've been seeing huge banners supporting Grace Mugabe's likely appointment as Mnangagwa's replacement. Was Mugabe's vice president really plotting a coup, or is this just a nifty way of keeping things in the family? After all, Grace Mugabe is now well positioned to one day take over from her husband.
Yes, and in addition to the banners that were displayed, the First Lady was given a standing ovation by ruling party supporters, and there were numerous calls for her to be made Vice President. But of course, that'll only be confirmed at a special ruling party congress to be held next month. But to answer your question, the coup plot, for many in Zimbabwe, this is all a case of deja vu, because we saw similar accusations made against Mnangagwa's predecessor, as vice president, Joyce Mujuru. She too was sacked, and that was 3 years ago. And Mugabe accused her of creating a separate center of power and of plotting to unseat him. But some analysts said that, in fact, she had become too popular, and that's why she was sacked. Grace Mugabe told a big church rally at the weekend that Mnangagwa also wanted to topple her husband from power, and that he'd wanted to do that for a long time. Of course, she's the president's much younger wife. She's in her 50s. And for a long time, she played almost no part in politics. She was involved in charity work. She was very much a family person. But then back in 2014, she suddenly moved onto Zimbabwe's political stage in a big way. She got a PhD. And since then, she's got elected to lead the ZANU-PF Women's League, which is a very powerful position. And the speculation has been for some time that she may actually want to be president. And last weekend we saw her asking publicly why that shouldn't be the case, why she shouldn't be president. Of course, it's not an ambition that Mnangagwa's supporters would be happy with, but he is for now out of the way. What we don't know yet is how many of those left in ZANU-PF also wanted to be president, or whether they have other party members in mind.
Now, in a statement attributed to Mnangagwa, he insists that he's always been loyal to the president, but that now, after this betrayal, he's determined to return to Zimbabwe to lead the country. Is he in any real position to mount a challenge to the Mugabes?
Well, Mnangagwa was certainly thought to command a lot of support within the military, but we don't know that for sure, and we don't know what that support looks like now. If he does have supporters in the military, especially among the top brass, they may well be removed from their positions. Mnangagwa's other key support base is the war veterans. Those are people who fought in the independence war in the 1970s. The war veterans issued a statement today saying that they've disowned Mugabe. A few years ago, that would have been very significant. The war veterans were a group that ZANU-PF relied on in previous elections, but their influence is waning now. The president has been careful in the meantime to cultivate 2 other powerful constituencies within his party, the youth and the women. And of course, as I've just said, Grace Mugabe heads the Women's League within ZANU-PF. So Mugabe is still in a very strong position within the ruling party. Could Mnangagwa really challenge him? It's not clear how, especially if Mnangagwa really is out of the country. As you said, he's been said to be in South Africa. Mugabe, though, still looks to be by far in the strongest position. But of course, we really don't know what Mnangagwa might be planning to do next.
Oliver Matthews in Harare, thank you very much indeed for that. Dozens of refugees from South Sudan who had been seeking shelter in Uganda have returned home, driven by hunger. The UN says that's because last month food distribution in refugee camps was delayed, meaning that tens of thousands of people got very little to eat in October. For some, the journey back home has been deadly. At least 8 refugees have been killed after returning to civil war-ravaged South Sudan. Clement Bonero has this report.
Oliver Wani fled war and poverty in South Sudan. Hunger drove him back home. Like tens of thousands of other refugees, he was living in this camp in northern Uganda. When the food ran out, he returned to his home country, only to find death on the way back.
We went to look for him, and we found out he was killed. His body was dumped on the road.
This camp in Palarinia houses about 180,000 refugees from South Sudan. Each refugee is supposed to get rice, beans, oil and salt every month. But last month, thousands went hungry after food delivery was delayed. The UN says that was because of limited supplies in Uganda. Desperate, dozens left the camp.
Some of the refugees may decide to return to their homes earlier than they are supposed to be. Our desire is that each and every refugee should return to their home country when there's peace. But if there's no support, it means we may lose lives instead of protecting lives.
The World Food Programme says it started giving cash to refugees so they can buy food during delays. Many, however, fear it won't be enough.
I can't feed my family, so I've decided to go back to South Sudan. I may get killed, but dying of hunger is too painful.
At least 8 refugees have died in recent weeks after returning to get food in South Sudan, where a bloody civil war has killed tens of thousands since 2013.
In the South African province of KwaZulu-Natal, local politics is dangerous business, with dozens of people killed in politically motivated shootings in recent years. With President Jacob Zuma stepping down as chief of the African National Congress in December, what's happening in KwaZulu-Natal is shining a harsh light on the divisions at the heart of the ruling party.
This accommodation for migrant workers is one of the most dangerous places in South Africa. Gleeblands in KwaZulu-Natal is home to several of the gunmen responsible for a slew of killings in the battle for control of the regional branch of the ruling ANC party that has claimed more than 90 victims since 2014.
We lost a lot of our friends here. As you can see, these holes here, R5, AK-47 had been used to us. I'm not telling you the hearsay. I'm telling something that I was present when it happened. The people that are hitmen here, they are being used by the politicians.
Tens of thousands of people live in the complex of 71 squalid dormitories. It's easy to recruit shady characters ready for illicit work from the residences. They're watched over by police who turn a blind eye.
And there's been so many complaints about corruption and collusion with hitmen by the local, involving the local police station and other certain individuals within the police force, and no proper investigation to stop that. So the hitmen thought they could just carry on doing what they do best, and because of the economic conditions, it makes it very easy to hire a hitman. So it's proliferated. And now it's really sort of out of control.
Some members of the ANC accept the party's share of the blame for the mounting bloodshed, but few have acted to stop the hitmen or to protect their targets.
We cannot continue with this kind of culture. It's a counter-revolutionary culture. Killing is a crime even in the Bible. So we cannot tolerate it. We should not tolerate it. All of us must take that decision that I'm going to be part of finding a solution.
With the leadership of the ANC in the balance, the party is more divided than ever between Cyril Ramaphosa, the deputy president, and the president's former wife, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who comes from the region. The bloodshed in the state looks set to continue for the foreseeable future.
Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Eye on Africa. There's more world news coming up after the break.